Welcome, greetings, sharps, squares, newbies. I'm going to start that way, I think, going forward. On this, the Parleh Sports Betting Show with me, Jorey Middlestadt, and the professional, my co-host, Harley Redlick. Good morning, Harley.
How you doing, Jorey?
Good. It's Friday morning. That's usually when we record this podcast. I should also add that we're coming to you on Canada's sports betting network, otherwise known as the Parleh. Hashtag us on social media. The hashtag is ParlehSBS, and we always want to hear from you. Questions at theparleh.com is how you can email us. You can also reach each of us on Twitter. I'm at Jorey Middle, Jorey, Jorey. I think you can figure out Middle. And Harley is at Sharp Edge Picks. I'm not spelling it out because I think most of you are smart enough to figure out how to spell it. So let's just give a quick overview of what's going to happen on the show today. We're going to recap another winning week for Harley. 3 straight, right? Three straight. We're going to try and make it 4, although we may not have as many picks as per usual as we're in the bye week before the Super Bowl. We'll do a quick recap of what we saw last weekend on Championship Sunday. We are going to look at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics, which are already underway. Competition has started. And I believe the opening ceremonies are actually happening as we speak. Our betting concept of the day is bankroll management. And I don't know that there is a more important thing to talk about when it comes to sports betting than bankroll management. Harley, being a professional bettor, will have a lot to say on that front. We'll take a look at the Stanley Cup Futures. I know we touched upon this in one of our previous shows, but now we're at the All-Star break and there's no games to discuss. So we'll talk about that. We may take a quick peek at the Raptors, who are on a back-to-back tonight hosting the Atlanta Hawks. And we'll talk a little bit about April 4th, which is going to be a big day here in Ontario. We'll talk about other provinces as well as things roll out. But April 4th is now the day where everybody who wants to be, who's already going through the process of being regulated and licensed, will be operating. There will be operating sports books in Ontario on April 4th. So, Harley, first, let's pat you on the back again, pump your tires for another winning week. And on Championship Sunday in the NFL, you had the Cincinnati Bengals parlayed with the under the total, and you cashed it at what did it pay in the end? 2.4
standard parlay. Yeah.
2.4.
Just under 3-1. It was a great parlay that came in. Needless to say, when they were down 21-3 midway through the second quarter, the odds of pulling it off were almost 0, as we had to keep Mahomes without scoring another touchdown.
But I saw your tweet at the half, and I could tell you were not a happy camper at that point.
Listen, you make some bets, and at the half, the read looked obviously horrendous. I mean, even in the first half, KC scored touchdowns on their drives. They had a few third downs where the Bengals just couldn't hold them, or they might have kicked a couple more field goals, and that game could have been closer to 13-7 or 13-3 or even 20-7 at the half, where it had a better chance of coming in. It miraculously did come in, only to see the Rams blow it. I lost that game by the 3-point hook, which kind of sucks. I thought the Rams were the better team. There were a few times where Garoppolo threw balls away that almost got intercepted, almost got fumbled. And it was funny, even the last play of the game, they almost miraculously pick-sixed it and scored a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Again, we talk about it a lot on this show. It goes to show you the value of the 3. That comes in 8% of the time in close games. It's the 1 point in the NFL that's worth laying extra points to get or to lay. Betting teams minus 2.5 or plus 3.5 is huge. That's the one very valuable point and the most important takeaway. And when you're laying 3.5 points, buyer beware, because it's tough.
And I remember you saying at the time that this is a very rare occurrence for you to actually bet first a favorite and then a favorite of more than 3 points. In this case, the Rams are 3.5, although they pretty much closed 4, but when we recorded, you were laying 3.5 at that time. I don't want to dwell too much on last week because we're Friday. It's all been digested. And then, of course, next week is Super Bowl week. And we're going to have a tremendous Super Bowl show for you, breaking down the game every which way. tons of props, which is by far the most fun way to watch the Super Bowl. I've been doing it that way for years, as I'm sure many have. I'm positive I'm not alone in that regard. But a couple of just quick things on the games themselves. The end of the half for the Chiefs, right? They're up 21-3. They scored touchdowns on all 3 drives. And they have 5 seconds left, right? They're at the 4-yard line, whatever they were, 2-yard line even. And they just completely botched it. Everybody knows in that scenario with 5 seconds, if you're going to take the chance and run a play, it's got to be a quick slant. If you don't see it right away, the ball is thrown away. It'll leave you 1 or 2 seconds to try to, and it's incomplete, clock stops. You run your field goal team out. You take the pretty much automatic 3 points. To me, there was a little bit of arrogance on the part of the Chiefs there, number one. And number two, if you go back and watch the video, right, Mahomes threw a pass out into the flat. So in the field of play to Tyreek Hill, if he gets tackled, the half's over. It's catastrophic and idiotic. And if you watch as soon as Hill got tackled, Mahomes is signaling to call a timeout. Well, news to Mahomes, they didn't have any timeouts. So he completely botched that. And I think that rattled the Chiefs because they were a completely different team in the second half. Mahomes was horrible in the second half. The Bengals made some defensive adjustments, got their offense rolling. And to me, I think it was a little bit of Chiefs arrogance that caught up with them. How did you see it?
I thought the play call was strange. The only defense
beyond strange.
The only defense I have for them is as soon as they called the play, everybody thought it was going to be a slant in the middle of the field. So if I was a linebacker, an outside linebacker, I'd be cheating in. And you'd think if you actually pulled off a screen pass, the guy would just walk into the end zone by himself because nobody would be with him. And if that's how it would have played out, it would have been the ultimate kind of cool move. but you didn't need it. You were already up a lot, and the 3 points was kind of more helpful. The truth is, nobody went into the half even with that thinking, oh, that's what the Bengals need. Now the Bengals are going to come back and win it. It would seem like a footnote, and it was only how the next hour and a half played out miraculously for the Bengals, and the Chiefs blew it for the second time, incidentally. They were just as bad in the second half in Cincinnati a month earlier.
Yeah, it was almost a carbon copy.
Coordinator in Cincinnati just seems to figure out adjustments. The pundits were critical of the Chiefs. They ran the ball probably too much in the second half. They played a little too conservatively for that team with a big lead, just holding on to the lead. Just as a reminder, everybody who was pissed off the week before with the coin toss, the Chiefs won the toss again.
Yes.
And I am sure everybody saw them win the toss and said, oh, great, here we go again. Another automatic Chiefs touchdown. So there are no locks and there are no guarantees. And I mean, the karma for the Chiefs is a bitch that they got the ball. I would have liked Cincinnati to have gotten the ball and scored a touchdown without Mahomes getting a chance with the ball, and really would have taught them the value of the toss. But we would have chatted a lot about that had they won the toss and scored again to win the game.
In the other game, I think the Rams proved that they were the better team. They were going up and down the field, and they had that first drive pick in the end zone by Stafford, who otherwise played incredible, other than that one long pass late that should have been picked off by Tart. But just to wrap that one up, I'm very happy for Matt Stafford. I've always been a fan of his talent and just thought that he was in the absolute wrong situation. And that's a discussion we could talk about with NFL quarterbacks down the road. And I do want to have that discussion. But the one thing I talked about going in for the Rams was the way that they had really struggled in the last 4 or 5 weeks prior, holding leads, especially in the fourth quarter. Well, they flipped the script this time, right? Because they were down 17-7. Their defense made all the stops in the fourth quarter. Their offense scored when they had to. Good for them. They were the better team, deserving. And now we have a really intriguing Super Bowl. And I don't want to spoil anything, but the one thing I do want to say is if you have a particular side that you like, right, you may want to bet it right away because the line opened Rams -4. The total was 49.5. Excuse me. Right now, you're seeing a mix of 4s and 4.5s, and the total's actually gone down to 48.5. Right. So if you like the Bengals, I don't see it going beyond 4.5. Do you? So if you like the Bengals, now might be the time. Would you agree?
Yeah, 4.5 seems on the higher side of life. I mean, the Rams are the better team, and I think the
Don't give anything away for next week. Sorry to interrupt. Don't give anything away for next week. But I'm just saying, right? If you like it, I don't see it going to 5, right? So this might be your best opportunity to grab the Bengals.
There's a better chance probably that there's buyback on Cincy, and
I agree.
But it seems like it'll float in that kind of 3.5 to 5 range.
Okay. And one last thing about last week, Rafael Nadal, right? We talked about it going in. I said, if you're going to bet it, bet Rafa. I thought Medvedev would win the match. And if you go back and look at the underlying numbers, it's actually almost impossible to understand how Rafa won the match. I'm just talking about the raw statistical numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take the time to go through it. But the heart of that guy is unbelievable. And just, want to congratulate him for being the first to 21 Grand Slams, the double slam, because now he's won each twice like Djokovic. And it was just an incredible, almost 5.5 hour battle. I woke up early to watch about the second half of the match. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
I give these guys credit. It's Nadal, it's Brady. I mean, these guys are my age. Like, if I had 100 million in the bank, there is no way I am waking up early and doing this in the heat for 6 hours. I mean, I played tennis yesterday with my wife in Mayfair. It was a 2-hour live ball session. And after an hour and a half, I had enough. So, I mean, all the credit in the world, but I'd be on a beach if I were these guys already calling it a career.
All right. So as I suggested off the top, and if you're seeing this on video, we're going to cover the Olympics today because they're happening as we speak. It's the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. I will say this, if not for watching some football games on NBC and some hockey on CBC, the Olympics might have happened and I might not have known. Like, they just kind of crept up on us, didn't they? I guess because of the recency of the summer games, right? They got pushed back here. I don't know. They're just, the excitement hasn't been quite the same. I don't want to take anything away because Canada shines at the Winter Olympics, and I am excited to watch it, and certain sports in particular. But I don't know. It's just, there doesn't seem to be the same buzz. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling the same way?
There's no fans. The time zone shift is insane. I think there's world resentment towards China between kind of their human rights violations and their COVID policies and lab leaks or whatever it is. You add it all up and there's resentment. There's not a feeling of community. There's boycotts by politicians, but not athletes, which I thought was the stupidest thing ever. I mean, to me, China got the best of both worlds. Imagine a world where you get all the athletes and no bureaucrats. Like, who the hell needs Trudeau or the CEO of Rogers or whoever the hell was going to show up at the Olympics? So, I mean, that was meaningless to me. But yeah, I mean, there's a lack of flavor. Obviously, the men's hockey suffers when you don't get a chance to see Ovechkin try to win a gold medal against Crosby. I mean, that's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. The one thing I want to point out to those who, are thinking of betting on the Olympics, and you are probably not an expert in many of these sports, I'll lump myself in with that group. Like many, periodically a big event, you'll tune in, but otherwise you're tuning in every 4 years. And I'll just say, unless you follow one or more of these sports extremely closely, know who the participants are, know the backstory, injuries, all this kind of stuff. Just, don't listen to people who are pretending to be experts. Try and find experts in the field if you're going to read up and want to make bets. Otherwise, maybe take a step back or just do it purely as entertainment. So as a professional bettor, how do you approach, a one-off event that happens every 4 years like this, Harley?
Like everything else, very selectively. So the first thing I look for is how much juice are they charging? Does the VIG make sense in what's going on? So a great example is women's hockey. Both the U.S. and Canadian women are minus 110 to win the championship. Finland is 15-1. Russia's 33-1. So let's see how much VIG is actually going on. If the U.S. and Canadian women play in the finals, which they probably will, they'll both be minus 110 in the finals. So you definitely can't bet the U.S. or Canadian women now, because for the off chance that they get upset, you're just giving up value for no reason. So unless you have a read where you think Finland or Russia are somehow going to beat the U.S. or Canadian women's hockey teams, which, I mean, women's sports is really, really dominated by the favorites. The U.S. and Canadian teams and sides take women's hockey very, very seriously. And in Finland and Russia and everywhere else, it's an afterthought. They're the most dominant teams, and they'll probably meet in the finals. And then you might as well bet it in the finals based on your read. I'm looking forward to their matchup on Monday night. It's at 11:10 p.m. If I was the coach of either team, I wouldn't be showing much. It's just the play-in round. You're both going to get in. It doesn't really matter your seeding because, again, you're not that worried about whether you have to play Finland or Russia or the Czechs or anybody else. So I wouldn't give much. I would treat it as an exhibition game. I would treat this as a pass. Read your best on U.S. versus Canada, how they look against some of the competition, and then maybe make a value bet if you think there's an edge to one side or the other when they play each other in the finals.
What about puck lines? Like I saw Canada won their first game. They played Switzerland. And I recall one of the, and I apologize, I don't remember who it was. And it may have even been on two videos on the parlay every day. Somebody said, lay the 5.5 goals with Canada against Switzerland. And I mean, Canada won going away. So would you look at puck lines? Because you're going to see a lot of these like really lopsided scores, or again, if you follow the sport, or, you know, really,
if you follow the sport,
tread carefully. If
you got a great read, I mean, a lot of that comes down to coaching. It's very similar to college football when there's 35-point favorites. There are coaches like Alabama's Nick Saban, who, I mean, I think he's aware of the point spread. He knows how the boosters think, and he's happy to cover the spread and win by 45. And there's other coaches that once they're up 24-0 in the third quarter are happy to run the ball into the line of scrimmage. If Canada's up 3-0 in the third period, some coaches will play defense and just ride out the victory, in which case they don't cover. And some coaches will lay it on, in which case they will cover. Now, if the people making those bets understand how the coach is thinking and bets for that reason, then they're making good value bets. If their thinking is Canada's just way better, that's not analysis, and then you're just giving up juice by betting.
Okay, so how do you look at the men's tournament, which was supposed to be best on best NHLers? We all know that isn't happening. A lot of the players now on the Canadian team, well, on all the big country teams, you know, the big 6 or 7. I mean, we don't know most of them. Some maybe some familiar names, past NHLers, upcoming prospects. So, because people are going to watch it, it's hockey. We're Canada. How do you handicap that?
So if you look at the lines, Russia's the favorite. They're plus 140 to win it all, to win the gold, followed by Finland at 4-1, Sweden at 6-1, and Canada at 7-1. Russia was bet down from plus 160 a couple of weeks ago. They're sending a more seasoned squad and should win it. It's just not enough juice. You're not getting enough of a payoff. Too many things can happen. That's a pass. The rest of the teams have a lot of weaknesses, as you said. Pass is a common thing for me. You're going to hear it later in the show when we talk about bankroll management. You need to pass on a lot of bets to get your edges to win. One thing I will note, Canada is so bad in this tournament. They're only a 2-1 favorite in their opening game versus, do you know who they're playing in their opening game?
China?
Germany. Okay?
Oh, Germany.
The German hockey team. Like, has a single
but the Germans have been coming. They're producing some players.
Well, evidently,
except I don't know that none of them are on the team. Right?
Yeah,
they're all in the NHL or the minors or right in college.
This is like, imagine Canada only being a 2-1 dog to Germany in soccer. And I mean, the Canadian team, shout out to them in soccer. We're not covering that, but Qatar is going to be a lot of fun with the Canadians there. If we lose our opening game to Germany, some of the media geeks and pundits are going to freak out like it's the upset of the century, and it's happening 1/3 of the time. That's how weak this Canadian squad is. and how unprepared they are for the Olympics. So I got to pass. I think it'll be entertaining hockey to watch just because it's the Olympics. But right now, there's nothing that floats my boat on hockey on either the men or the women's side.
All right. Yeah, I can't sit here and make picks on Olympic hockey because there's just too many unknowns and we just don't know most of these players. You're right. I think Russia's the favorite because they're sending a lot of KHL players, right?
Correct.
And so they have arguably the best squad, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know that for certain. So what about other sports, right? You look at you look it up on the guide on your TV to see what's coming up that night, or if you're up in the morning, right, when things are going on there in the evening. And, there's downhill skiing, there's freestyle skiing, there's luge, there's bobsled, speed skating. I could go on and on. What do you do with these other sports?
You can find value in one place to me and one place only, assuming you're not an expert in luge and understanding tracks and angles and distance. And the truth is, I'm sure there's a couple people from Sweden or Denmark that are like that. I'm not in that category. So the only way I can find value in the Olympics is figuring out who the big name overhyped players are and fade them. And that occurs in women's alpine skiing. Michaela Schifrin is the big name.
I know her.
If you know her, she's the big name. She's a two-time American Olympic gold medalist. She won gold in Korea. If you can fade her, the Americans, especially the popular ones, are overbet by the deeper-pocketed American bettors. So if you find a situation where she's going up against somebody from a small European country that specializes in the sport, you got a shot. And Michaela's got one serious competitor in each of her two events. So you got Petra Vlhova in the Olympic slalom. She's actually the minus 115 favorite, and the Slovak is an expert in technical slalom. Take her. And then you got Sarah Hector plus 292. She's the Swedish alpine racer in the Olympic giant slalom. Both Petra and Sarah are specialists. They're experts. They're not coming from the popular betting American side. They're coming from small Sweden and small Slovakia, and they're really good. We're going to discuss bankroll management soon, but by betting more on Petra, who's minus 115, about 70-30, because that's more likely to happen than the plus 292, if you split, you make 20% profit. So again, these are bets largely against Michaela Schifrin. Not that she's not great, just that she's overbet because she's the one American star in women's alpine skiing. And those are the two bets I would be making right now in the Winter Olympics.
Okay. The only thing I can add to that in doing a little bit of reading is there might be a little value in the Canadian alpine skiers, the men, in the speed events, the downhill, the super GS, and I think even the GS. Don't quote me on that. My reading was not that extensive, but we've got some really good young skiers who have had podiums of late and are on a bit of a roll. I'm talking about Brody Seeger, Jack Crawford, and Broderick Thompson. Those are the top Canadian men in the speed events. There may be some value in one of them or more. Do a little more reading than I did, but they're not going to be favorites. Mm-hmm. So, and if you go back and look at the history, especially in the downhill and the super GS, the favorites don't always win. It's like there's always surprises in those events because, especially in the downhill, right? It's one run. Mm-hmm. And anything can happen at the speeds and, the type of well, do you watch downhill skiing? It's nuts. So tons of credit to these guys because they are, the crazy Canucks of lore. I'm dating myself now, where we all knew actually all of them. It's a bit of a shame that we don't these days, but that's all I have to add on Olympic value bets. Enjoy. I would say tread carefully. Don't put a lot of money on stuff you don't know a lot about for sure. And that actually just piggybacks really nicely into our betting concept or term of the day. In this case, it's a very, very important one, and that's bankroll management. Now, I want to read you something that my old co-host, my friend and colleague, Randall the Handle, who you know as well, I co-hosted sports betting shows with for 15 years and is one of, I guess you could call him one of the foremost experts on sports betting in Canada. Very well known. He's been doing it forever. So he put out a tweet either yesterday or the day before that went as follows. Sports betting is more popular than ever. Just wanted to warn people to be careful. It's very, all in caps, it's very hard to win in the long run. I've known thousands of bettors. Maybe 2 or 3 were proficient, profitable at it. Treat it as entertainment and never, in all caps, never pay someone or an outfit for picks. I'll let you just first react to that tweet.
Amazing tweet. Good for Randall. When I launched Sharp Edge, I was asked by a couple of people, can we charge? And my answer was always no, because it's hard enough to beat the juice. To start giving out picks and doling out picks. I mean, you see all the stories where they give half the picks on one side, half the picks on the other side, and then just follow it up. And I've spoken to a couple of the guys who do it, and some of them will tell you that the guys who used to call into them were just guys that were bored in life, didn't like their wives, were just looking for somebody to talk to and schmooze. So, I mean, that's a whole different story for another day.
Yeah, no, and I want to talk about touts and buying picks and all that. Not now. That'll be in the future.
Sounds good.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Let's talk about bankroll management. Everything I'm about to say assumes you are sharp. You're finding edges and value. If you aren't, that's okay. For 99% plus of listeners, sports betting is for fun entertainment. Bet money you can afford to lose, play for fun. And as long as you don't need to cancel a vacation because you're broke or throw things at the TV in fits of rage because you lost, you are playing within your means. And that's great. And the truth is, I know guys who literally live in $5 million homes and bet less than a couple $100 a game. And to me, those are great gamblers because they're playing well within their means. Unfortunately, I know guys in debt who are racking up credit and extra problems and are being chased by not the nicest of guys because they are not playing within their means. And ultimately, forget about the nonsense that OLG puts out or Bell Let's Talk or any other sports book about responsible gambling. They're trained to take as much money as they can and fleece the fools. Don't be a fool. Play with money you can afford to play with. If you want to do this properly to make money, you need to bet big dollars, though, because making 5% long-term is amazing. And then we can discuss what bankroll management looks like.
All right. So you were talking more to what they call the sharps or they may not be professionals per se, but those who are savvy sports bettors. For those, we're going to talk about April 4th in a bit. But again, in Ontario, as of April 4th, there's going to be a lot of choice because there's going to be a lot of sports books that are fully licensed and operating. So for those who are new, and remember, as we talked about in our first episode, and we'll continue to remind people, we're trying to educate those who want to become sports bettors because it's legal, fully legal now, single game wagering, and it's about to burst upon the scene. The ads are going to start blowing up in your face for anybody who watches sports. So, how would you recommend somebody, they want, we're coming to April 4th, or right now you want to go to, the provincial lottery and open an account. How do you determine your starting bankroll? Is it 100? Is it 200? How do you go about doing that?
You mean $200 or $200,000? What?
100. I'm talking 100 or $200. I'm talking to somebody who's new, new, and they want to get into it and they want to play.
We're talking about two totally different worlds here. If you want to make $50,000 a year betting sports and take it seriously, you need to bet $1 million a year minimum. And you need a $50,000 plus bankroll. That's bankroll management. If you want to take it seriously, we could talk about that path. If you're doing this for fun, do it for fun. Put a couple $100 in your account, bet $5, $10 a game. Eventually, $5, $10 a game won't be enough for you to sweat. So you'll go to $20 a game or $50 a game. And I mean, all the credit to you if you have a job that pays you over $100,000 a year and you can get excited about a $10 bet, because lifetime, you're probably going to lose money. And the less you lose, the better off you are.
So let's just use round numbers. Let's say you want to open your account, you want to put $100 in, right?
Okay.
How do you determine, or should you determine, okay, what's my minimum bet? What's my maximum bet? Right? Isn't that how you should be looking at managing that $100?
I mean, I prepared all this assuming you had a $50,000 bankroll and trying to make $50,000 a year to partially live off your sports betting.
Well, you can look at it either way, right? I mean,
yeah, you're right. You're right. If
100,000,
you're right. You're right.
You still have to approach it the same way. It's just right. The quotients are different.
100%. If you're a university kid with a sharp mind who understands finance, and you're eyeing a life of working at the bank for 30 or 40 years, and you want to be like Harley and eventually quit your job at the bank to bet sports for a living, here's what I would recommend you do. Open up accounts with as many legal sports books as possible who are offering bonuses. Bonuses are huge and can give you a nice little edge and lift. Track all your results. There's no, I was upset about this result or that result. So you've got a spreadsheet. You put in $100 on the FanDuel account and $200 on the DraftKings account or anywhere else. Track everything you do, everywhere you do it. Bet less than 5% on any one game. That's proper bankroll management. I mean, some guys would say only bet 2% of your bankroll per game because once you lose it, it's gone. And you got to treat your bankroll like you can't just restock your $100. I mean, I know you can when it's only $100, but if you're a professional gambler and your bankroll is $75,000, once you go through that $75,000, you're tapped, you're done. I mean, you want to start borrowing money on the street, those guys charge 2% a week and you're done. It's over. It's finished. You're going to end up in a ditch. It's bad news. So play with the $100 in your accounts, bet between 2 and 4% per game. Find the best bets and the best edges. I mean, realistically, I'm going to say bet 2 games a night. That's an average. You want to bet between 3 and 900 games a year. But if your sport is baseball, do it during the baseball season. If you find edges on Saturday college basketball, bet Saturday college basketball. Don't bet 2 bets a day. Be disciplined enough to take 3 weeks off when you're not feeling it.
Or bet on the sports that you like and you're going to watch. I mean, that's really what I think most casual and new bettors are going to do. They're going to say, I'm a hockey fan. I'm at home on my couch on Saturday night watching Hockey Night in Canada. My favorite team is the Canucks. So I'm going to bet the late game on Hockey Night, right? And that's how I'm going to get my enjoyment. And so just to be clear, you said 2 to 4% should sort of be your range. I know there's a lot of people out there that do what's called unit betting, right? So that, just to quickly explain it in the most simple terms, you decide what your 1 unit bet is. So to your point, using $100 that you put into your account, you say my 1 unit bet is $2 or 2% of my total deposit, right? And then you can rate your bets accordingly. Is there a sort of a maximum you should have? If 1 unit is $2, should your maximum be 5 units or $10? And do you believe in unit betting? In other words, ranking your bets according to how much you like it, or you don't go that way?
My problem with the unit betting is exactly what you just said. Once you get to 5 unit bets, you're betting 10% of your bankroll on a specific bet. You're going bust. You're a fraud. Anybody who's doing that, it's not going to work. So unless 1 unit is 1% of your bankroll and your max bet is about 4 or 5 units up to 4 to 5, anybody who's betting more than 5% of their bankroll on a bet is going to go bust. That's not going to work. So if 1 unit is 1%, yes, you can do the staggering. You want to do staggered bets for a couple of reasons. If you're betting an underdog you like at 4 to 1 odds, you would bet less on them than if there was a point spread bet you like that was coming in 50-50 to reduce your volatility. Also, if there's a futures bet you like, and we'll get into that next week, there's a futures bet, a big underdog that I love for NFL Super Bowl MVP. It pays over 30 to 1. So if I'm going to bet $2,000 on a point spread game to make $2,000 or to make $1,900, I'm not betting $2,000 at 30 to 1 to make 60 grand. I'll probably bet it for $400 to make 12 grand kind of thing. So that's kind of the variation in bet sizing, depending on, I think it's a function of the payouts and the units. Your edges should be about the same. So my advice would be, under this hypothetical, if you opened up $100 accounts at 4 different places, I would say you're working off a $400 total bankroll. On average, you want to bet about $10 a game, is about 2.5% of your $400 bankroll. So $10 a game is your general. If you're betting kind of point spread things that are 50-50s and you want to bet 15 or $20, I could live with that. You're betting dogs at 2 to 1, 3 to 1. I want you to be betting $5, $6 on that. And if you're betting a long shot future, we're going to get to the futures in the NHL, and there's one I really like at 40 to 1. I would only be betting $1 or $2 on that. Because if you bet too much at 40 to 1, and we're going to talk about hedging in a later show also.
Yeah.
If you start betting too much on the 40 to 1, you're going to start hedging it way too early. You're going to just pay double juice, and you're going to give up all your value. So you make a good play, it ends up winning, and you don't even make 40 to 1. You make like 8 to 1, and you would have been better off just betting the 40 to 1 for less.
So for those who may not be familiar with the terminology, you're making a future bet, like you said, at 40 to 1, and to win, let's say, the Stanley Cup, and the team advances through the first 2 rounds, but there's still 2 to go, and you're considering, do I bet the other way now, right? To hedge. That's what you're talking about. And we'll get into hedging as another betting concept down the road, but you're saying not a good idea, right?
You're just paying double juice. It's a bad idea as a general rule. I mean, there's rare instances it makes sense. So you change your read on the situation. You made a mistake when you originally made the bet, or you bet $100 at 40 to 1 instead of $10. Or your financial circumstances really change or something happens. But as a general rule, if you're hedging bets on a weekly basis, you're a lifetime loser. And anybody who tells me that they know how to bankroll manage that starts hedging is a fraud.
Okay. Duly noted. We were going to talk a little bit about NBA futures, but in each show we've called an audible. So I'm calling an audible here. We will talk about NHL futures, though, because we're at the All-Star break. And so we'll do the same thing with the NBA when they reach the break in a couple of weeks. But the Raptors are in action tonight. They're hosting the Atlanta Hawks off a back-to-back big win last night in another overtime game, beating the Chicago Bulls. Their starters are playing big minutes. When I looked earlier, they were a 1.5 point favorite. I'd have to go look up the total if you have thoughts on the total. But any quick thoughts on the Raptors hosting the Atlanta Hawks tonight as a 1.5 point favorite at an empty, or I guess 500 person crowd at Scotiabank Arena?
So the Raps are minus 125 on the money line. So they're about 54% to win. Remember, true home court is equal to about 60%. And so you would think the line makers are giving an edge to the Hawks there. But again, you got to factor in that we don't really have home court because we live in Fordland, where unlike every other arena in the NBA, we don't have fans, where they do. Given the Raptors are playing the second of a back-to-back after an OT win, they actually have respect for the Raptors in the line, so I wouldn't be disheartened as a Raptors fan. Overall, the Raptors are solid, obviously, in the standings. They should be playing in the play-in game, should even host it. Hopefully by then there's 20,000 screaming fans. The one thing, there's not lines out yet. There will be lines out this afternoon. Take a look at the player props, and you might want to short Van Vliet's points.
Yeah.
Van Vliet just made the All-Star team. He's been a monster. He's logging insane minutes. I mean, if there was ever
the most in the NBA, he's number 1.
On the second of a back-to-back after the overtime, I mean, look for him to get extra rest, which is a beautiful thing because the less minutes he's on the court, the less chance he has. I mean, you talk about the heart of a lion and a champ. I give him all the credit in the world. What he did to his career, literally midway through that Sixers series, is unbelievable. I mean, he had a son born and it rejuvenated his life like nothing I've ever seen in sports. I love the guy. I love his heart. But tonight I would probably short him. Again, the lines aren't out on those types of bets yet. But when they do come out, I would take a shot with that.
All right. NHL at the break. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at some NHL futures, looking for value. I think it's, if you've been tuning in, and if you haven't been and you're new, just understand that you are rarely going to hear either of us take an odds-on favorite as a future bet, right? It's almost never going to happen. We're looking for value if you're going to tie up your money now for a few more months, right? We're looking for a slightly longer shot, maybe a medium shot, maybe one medium shot, one longer shot if you are going to tie up your money for a while. And so you said you may have found a good value pick in the NHL either, and you can bet to win the division, to win the conference, to win the Stanley Cup. I was looking at the odds to win the cup and conference odds. What were you looking at?
I got one bet. I like the LA Kings at 40-1 to win the cup.
Huh.
So when you look at what's going on in the NHL right now, there's 6 quote unquote super teams: Colorado, Florida, Carolina, Tampa Bay, Vegas, and the Leafs. 4 of the 6 play in the East. So obviously the West is weaker. The LA Kings are second in their division, meaning they're hosting in the first round. They're only 2 points back of Las Vegas with 3 games in hand, and their division stinks. I mean, Edmonton, I would blow that team up. Connor McDavid, gone. Draisaitl, gone. Hyman, gone. Every coach, every manager. I mean, the talent on that team, and they're probably not going to make the playoffs. I mean, it's really the most pathetic thing. Imagine being in Edmonton right now. It's 30 below every day. You're in lockdown, and your hockey team has all the talent in the world and can't make the fucking playoffs. It's an embarrassment. I mean, that city should be embarrassed about what's going on there. So, I mean, the division is really weak for the LA Kings. I mean, it's funny. Kopitar is still leading the team in scoring. They got Doughty. They got Quick in net. They won cups a decade ago with that trio. You look at that team, and they're in a weak division. They're coming on strong. They're veterans. They got some talent. I mean, they struck lightning twice about a decade ago, and I could see it happening again at 40-1. That weak division, it's worth a shot.
I agree that the value's in the West, right? I mean, the East playoff teams are basically determined just over halfway through the schedule.
Correct.
Barring something crazy. So, and I mean, the two divisions are super top heavy. Like almost anybody could come out of there. So there may be some value in, a Pittsburgh, a Washington, even a Boston, perhaps, but the road's much more difficult. So I agree with you. The value is in the West. And the funny thing is that the team that I looked at in the West is just a little bit south of the LA Kings, and that's the Anaheim Ducks.
Okay.
And for many of the same reasons you just outlined, their odds are the same. They're 40-1. They've got a nice mix of some veterans and some really great young talent. And they have arguably a top 3 or 4 goalie in John Gibson. Every time I watch that team play, and it's not all that often, but every time Gibson just stands out. He's outstanding. You've seen Zegras and Terry and with the veteran captain in Getzlaf. They have a good, young, solid defense core. So for the very same reasons, the division, the conference, I think the value's on the 2 SoCal teams. You said the Kings. I think it might be the Ducks. Flip a coin and pick one.
I like that. I hear where you're coming from the Ducks. They're a young team, and it's usually hard to win 4 rounds in the NHL playoffs that way, but definitely worth a shot.
But they're also 20-1 to win the conference. Mm-hmm. And that might be, and I think the Kings are right around the same at 20-1. I think we've both uncovered value on 2 different teams. Before we leave you this week, and of course, we'll be back next week with a big show, Super Bowl. Our gambling story of the week is pretty simple. We've already alluded to it. April 4th is the day in Ontario when the floodgates will open, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ads are already going to be starting from all the big players that you've seen in the US and overseas, some of which have been operating in the gray already here, right? Many of us have accounts with offshore books right now. So again, April 4th in Ontario, and we'll look at some of the other jurisdictions as we go forward. And we'll talk, obviously, as we get closer about how to approach opening accounts at the various books. So my one question to start is, how many books do you think, sports books, do you think will actually be operating and open for business on day one, April 4th?
Well, we know that PointsBet and the Score will be operating since they've already gotten their official license registration. The Score never entered the gray market in Canada. Obviously, the Score is leveraging on the fact that they got huge brand name recognition, and most Canadian sports fans use their app to get the scores, and it'll be, in their minds, pretty easy to just click on their site once you use it already to load up an account. They took out a huge banner at Dundas Square with the April 4th date. And
that's in downtown Toronto for those listening elsewhere. Yes.
Yes. Good point. Downtown Toronto, huge advertising space.
Yeah.
And they're ready to go. FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM,
Caesars,
the big boys from Europe. I would assume Bet365, Betway, everyone else will transition from gray to the legal market. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's still unclear who's going to still operate in the gray market. How easy it will be, I don't know the answer right now, how easy it'll be to transition your account. I mean, if you have existing money on Bet365, are they going to now make you run through hoops to transition it and have to send you an email that says, well, you've been operating with us illegally for the last 10 years. Now you have to fill out a lot of paperwork because we're legally licensed. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if you're going to get to open up a new account and then be eligible for new sign-up bonuses, even though you bet with them. I mean, right now, Bet365 has me limited to literally $3 a bet because of my success betting with them. I don't know what happens. Do I get to open up a new account with them only to be cut off then when I can register a proper complaint with IGO and in Ontario because it's no longer the gray market and consumer protection matters? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs and unanswered questions. And if you speak to the authorities on the matter, the truth is they're not sure the answers because they don't have a sports betting expert.
But you would expect we're going to have at least, half a dozen right out of the gate on April 4th?
Oh, yeah. Okay. You'll have a half a dozen by April 4th, and you'll have a dozen by Canada Day. And again, if you can play one off the other and play line sharp and open up accounts and they don't cut you off too fast, which will be a whole different consumer protection issue that we're going to talk about with people because it makes me sick if Joe the plumber, who can't afford it and doesn't know anything, is allowed to bet $500 a game, and Harley's only allowed to bet $5 a game. But we'll deal with that as the time comes.
Yeah, well, we have 2 months before that happens. And as we certainly get closer, we see the marketing and advertising out there. We can react to that and see who's offering what in terms of sign-up bonuses and things of that nature. We'll be all over that as we approach April 4th. But next week, it's Super Bowl week, and we will do as much as humanly possible to handicap the game and get you all the winning prop bets that you need to properly enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday. If you have questions about the Super Bowl, anything we discussed today, or you want us to discuss something going forward, you want to comment on what we talk about, email us questions@theparleh.com. On social media, use the hashtag ParlehSBS. You can also reach out to either of us on Twitter @Jorey Middle or @Sharp Edge Picks. And always remember to check out the Parleh each and every day. And so for Harley, I'm Jorey. May all your picks be winners, ours too. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you next Friday for a Super Bowl edition of the Parleh Sports Betting Show on Canada's Sports Betting Network, The Parleh.